CBA remains in place until either the league or the union reach a new deal or one side halts negotiations. Given the significant difference in ask, the WNBPA announced on December 18th that its members have voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike when necessary. That could theoretically happen as soon as midnight, though.
January 9th, 2025. The clock struck 11:59 p.m. Eastern and something unprecedented started unfolding in women's basketball. The collective bargaining agreement was about to expire, and after months of players pushing for bigger paychecks, the narrative completely flipped. Public sentiment shifted in ways nobody saw coming.
That obviously can offer anybody a comfortable living. Never mind the fact that some of these players got endorsements and they're playing in other leagues, blah, blah, blah. Let's be real now. Anybody that's playing women's basketball, even an average player at this point, probably can make $1.5 million a year. We don't want to hear that this ain't enough money.
Here's what was actually on the table. We're talking about taking the average salary from $102,000 straight up to $780,000. That's not just a bump, that's nearly 10 times what players were making before. Elite players would be looking at close to $2 million per year by the deal's end. Factor in the new unrivaled league, where players can bank 6 figures in just 8 weeks, plus overseas opportunities, and you're suddenly talking about total earning potential north of $3 million annually. Top-tier talent could realistically see $4 to $5 million when you add up everything. The Players Association looked at all of this and said thanks, but no thanks. They didn't negotiate. They didn't make a counter-proposal. They just walked away.
It might as well have come and gone. The way they're talking, they're basically saying it's a wrap. And a deal won't be done. And the league is bracing for the possibility of eventual player strike. And it's crazy, because these players are considering a strike right now. You want to talk about looking horrible publicly?
So, what exactly are the players after? They want the same revenue split that NBA players get, roughly 50% of all basketball-related income. On paper, that sounds completely reasonable. Same sport, same principle, right? But here's the massive disconnect. The NBA pulls in about $10 billion every year. The WNBA, after 28 years, has never actually made a profit. Since 1997, NBA owners have been keeping this league afloat, even with the recent media deal bringing in $240 million annually, 6 times more than before. Nobody's really sure if the league's finances actually work.
Good faith. You better. Of course, the court of public opinion is going to be a mother on this. Striking is, quote, not something that we're going to do right this second, but we have in our back pocket. WNBA players, the WNBA won't lock out players, sources told CNBC. Bravo. And if the players do strike, that doesn't necessarily mean games will be missed. The season doesn't start till May.
This is where Adam Silver stepped into the spotlight. Sure, Kathy Engelbert is still running the WNBA, but Silver's strategy is written all over this situation. He gets something the players might be overlooking: how this looks to everyone watching. Check any comment section right now, and you'll see the story. Fans who were cheering for higher player salaries are now scratching their heads. You're walking away from nearly 10 times more money for a league that's never been profitable. You want to split revenue when there might not be any revenue to split. These aren't haters talking. These are real basketball fans trying to make sense of the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, we've literally offered you to go from a $249,000 salary to a nearly $2 million salary by the end of the new deal. See how that works out. See how that look works out for you. Especially considering that so many fans want to see who? Caitlin Clark. All right. Quote, we are still waiting on the league and teams to show up to these negotiations with the same spirit of compromise. WNBAPA Executive Director.
The league made a brilliant tactical move. They announced through CNBC that there would be no lockout. Think about what that does. If games get canceled, if the season gets pushed back, if fans can't watch Caitlin Clark and the new generation of stars, it's completely on the players. Not the owners, not the league office. The Players Association takes all the heat. Terry Carmichael Jackson called it a pressure tactic and said the league was just trying to create delays. But here's the reality. They don't need to lock anyone out. They already won the public relations war by offering that massive increase and watching it get rejected without any counteroffer.
WNBA's ever seen. WNBA superstar Caitlin Clark said last month, it's not something that can be messed up, and we're going to have to fight for everything we deserve. But at the same time, we need to play basketball. So, I got to tell you, this is, it doesn't look like this is happening today. That's for sure. And the fact that the league is doing the whole, no, we ain't going to lock out. We'll just chill. By the way, they've been chilling, all right. They didn't even...
The players voted to authorize a strike back on December 18th. Apparently, it wasn't even close. But voting to authorize and actually going through with it are completely different things. The season doesn't tip off until May. So technically, there's still time to work something out, but every single day that passes makes everything more compressed. Free agency, training camps, preseason, it all gets crammed into less time. And here's where the internal politics get really messy. You've got players who made $102,000 last season, staring at potential salaries of $400,000, $600,000 under this new deal. They're sitting there thinking, I'm supposed to walk away from hundreds of thousands of guaranteed dollars because we want revenue sharing instead of these massive raises.
Look at that joker and was like, all right, they'll get the hint when they don't hear back from us. And they've been very vocal. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. That revenue share thing, yeah, if the players are... And look, the players may be hell-bent on trying to get that. How long do you think a strike's really going to last with all that new money on the table?
Caitlin Clark said something really telling last month. She called this the biggest moment in WNBA history and said, it's not something that can be messed up. The players need to fight for what they deserve. But then she added this, we need to play basketball. That last part matters more than people realize. Clark understands that her value and everyone else's value depends entirely on actually being on the court. Her rookie season drove television numbers through the roof and generated attention the league had never seen. But all of that disappears if there's no season to watch. Let's dig into what's really happening here, because this whole situation reveals something deeper about where the WNBA actually stands. The Players Association isn't wrong about the growth. 2024 was absolutely massive for the league. Television viewership exploded, mostly because of Clark, but the entire product was compelling. Merchandise flew off the shelves. The cultural conversation around women's basketball hit levels not seen since the league started. By every measure of popularity, this was their best year ever. But popularity and profitability aren't the same thing. That $240 million media deal sounds huge until you do the math. Split among 12 teams, that's $20 million per franchise annually. Then you factor in everything it costs to run a professional sports team, arena costs, travel, coaching staff, medical personnel, marketing, front office operations. Even with a shorter season than the NBA, these teams are expensive to operate. The financial relationship with the NBA is complicated. The NBA directly owns about 42% of the WNBA, and NBA team owners control most of the franchises. This isn't charity, it's a long-term bet that eventually, maybe 10 or 15 years down the road, the women's league becomes self-sustaining and profitable. But that's a projection, not today's reality. From the players' perspective, this has to be frustrating. They see NBA players getting half of all revenue. They see the massive media attention their league finally received. They see sold-out arenas and viral highlights and genuine mainstream coverage. So naturally, they're thinking, why shouldn't we get the same deal? It's actually a fair question. The problem is the answer. NBA revenue sharing works because there's massive revenue to share. When you're splitting $10 billion, 50% means $5 billion for the players. Even divided among 450 players across 30 teams, Everyone makes millions because the math works. But let's say WNBA total revenue is $500 million, and that's being generous. 50% means $250 million, split among roughly 144 players across 12 teams. That averages out to about $1.7 million per player, which actually sounds pretty good until you realize that's before everything else gets paid: benefits, pensions, healthcare, all the other stuff in the collective bargaining agreement. The league's current offer essentially gets players to that same neighborhood without tying it to revenue sharing. $780,000 average salary, with stars making close to $2 million, puts total compensation in the right ballpark. The difference is the league keeps control over the financial structure and doesn't commit to a percentage that could become unsustainable if revenue doesn't meet projections. Here's the nightmare scenario keeping owners awake at night. They agree to 50% revenue sharing. Then the Caitlin Clark effect turns out to be a one-year thing. Viewership drops back to 2023 levels. The next few draft classes don't produce marketable stars. The unrivaled league and other competing ventures split the audience and reduce interest in the WNBA specifically. Any of those possibilities could tank revenue. Under fixed salaries, the league can adjust and manage the finances. Under revenue sharing, they're contractually required to pay out 50% of a shrinking pie, which just accelerates the losses. The players see that as the league's problem to solve. Generate more revenue, they say. Market us better, get better TV deals. Expand to more cities, build the brand. All valid points, but it doesn't change the fundamental risk that owners are calculating. This is where the strike threat gets really complicated. Usually workers strike to force management back to the bargaining table, but in professional sports, especially a league still building its audience, a strike can permanently damage the product. Casual fans who tuned in for the first time in 2024 to watch Caitlin Clark might not come back if there's no 2025 season. The momentum gets lost. Media attention moves elsewhere. Suddenly, you're not negotiating over how to split growing revenue. You're trying to rebuild an audience that already moved on. The Players Association understands this. That's why Terry Carmichael Jackson keeps emphasizing they want to negotiate, not strike. But the authorization gives them leverage, except the league neutralized that by refusing to lock anyone out. Now the players have to decide if they're actually willing to follow through. Think about the individual calculation each player is making. You're a veteran who earned $120,000 last season. The new deal offers you $450,000. If you strike for even 1 month into the season, you've lost tens of thousands. If it lasts half the season, you've given up more money than you made in your entire career to that point. Are you really going to hold out for revenue sharing that might, in the best case scenario, get you to $500,000 instead of $4 million? For most players, the math just doesn't work. The superstars have different calculations. Ija Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, they're pulling in serious endorsement money they can afford to strike because their income doesn't depend entirely on WNBA salary. But here's the thing, those stars need the platform too. Their endorsement value is directly connected to being visible. Being on television, playing meaningful games, a strike hurts them as well, just in a different way. Then there's Caitlin Clark, who's in her own category completely. Her endorsement deals are worth more than the entire WNBA payroll combined. She doesn't need the league financially, but she needs to play basketball. She's competitive. She wants to win a championship, and she's not going to sit out a season over a labor dispute when she's already set for life. If a strike drags on, does Clark eventually break ranks? Does she become the first player to cross a picket line? That would shatter the Players Association permanently. The league is betting that these internal divisions will force a deal. They're counting on rank-and-file players to pressure union leadership into accepting the massive raises and moving forward. They're gambling that stars won't risk their platforms for a principle that doesn't materially change their situations. And they're hoping that Clark's desire to compete will create urgency on the players' side. It's cold calculation, but it's probably correct. The deadline came and went. No deal, but also no lockout and no immediate strike. Just a holding pattern where the old agreement stays in place while both sides keep talking. Which means the league successfully avoided their worst-case scenario while maintaining public support. So, how does this end? Most likely, the players eventually accept something close to what's currently offered, maybe with minor tweaks that let them claim victory on a few smaller issues. They get their massive raises, the league avoids revenue sharing, everyone plays basketball in May, and the real negotiation becomes about the next collective bargaining agreement, 5 or 7 years from now, when hopefully the league's finances are clearer. But if the players actually dig in and strike, that's when things get ugly. Because the league has already shown they're willing to let the season get delayed rather than agree to revenue sharing, and the public, right now, is on the league's side. Fans see a nearly 10 times salary increase getting rejected, and they don't have sympathy for the player's position. Fair or not, the WNBA is at a crossroads. The growth is real. The opportunity is genuine, but the financial foundation is still fragile. This negotiation is ultimately about who bears the risk of that fragility. The league wants players to accept guaranteed raises with promises of more if revenue grows. The players want to share in the upside immediately, which means also sharing in the downside if things don't go as planned. Both positions make sense, but only one is going to win. Right now, the league is holding all the cards. They made the big offer. They refused to lock anyone out. They won the public relations battle. The players authorized a strike. They probably can't actually execute without destroying the momentum they've spent years building. What happens next determines not just player salaries, but the entire future of women's professional basketball in America.